Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of the ASMG Back Pass. Here, we're going to give you some hot takes from the past weekend of action, particularly in the UPSL Georgia Premier Division. And in that division, we have two teams that seem to be pulling away from the pack a little bit. That being Kalanji Per Profile and North Georgia United, two teams that are still perfect on the season. And it's going to be interesting to see if teams like Leminio, Georgia, who have started out pretty hot, can stay with them. Leminio, of course, being a team that is promoted from Division One. They won the regular season title. They did lose in the Division One playoffs to Pachuca, who are also looking to try to get into the playoff spots this season. Both of those teams doing well for promoted teams. Leminio, in particular, doing very well as they sit here in third place already in after 4 match weeks and ahead of some pretty heavy hitters. Um, as you go down the table here, UMAFC also being very impressive, although they dropped points this past weekend. We'll get into that game a little bit later. Dalton United, very, very slow start to the season. They did have a good victory for them over Georgia Revolution this past weekend here to climb back up a little bit in the table. Will they be able to repair their title chances as the coming weeks go? Time will only tell. Georgia Athletic, trying to stay in the hunt for not just a title, but to stay in the hunt for the playoffs, which they missed just by 1 point last season. So being in the playoffs this season will be quite the improvement for them. They're doing very well right now. They do have a game in hand as well to make up, so they can jump up a few more places too with positive results. Getting down to more of the disappointing areas, Potros and Georgia Revolution. These are two teams I think if you asked them at the beginning of the season, they would have been disappointed to be where they are right now after 4 match weeks. Two teams that typically are staying and competing at the top of the table. Of course, Potros winning the division a couple of seasons ago. Georgia Revolution always up there in the second or third spot, but now they find themselves down in eighth after some disappointing results, particularly this weekend. So they have a lot of work to do to get back into contention here. And of course, FC Birmingham below them and Pachuca, Georgia. These are two mid-table teams, and they're pretty much where I would have expected them to be at this point. These are two teams. Pachuca is a promoted team coming up, and you have to, be patient with the jump from Division One to Premier. Sometimes these things can transition pretty quickly, but most of the times this is pretty normal. But for FC Birmingham, it's pretty much a rebuilding situation, and they have some challenges off the field too that are affecting their play on the field. And we'll touch on that a little bit later on from their match this past weekend at Legion Field. Down near the bottom of the table, though, we have Albion SC and SSL FC. Again, slow starts for these two teams. I think that these two teams I would have guessed to be battling for the mid-table two playoff spots. Sometimes these things can fool you. SSL, very fortunate to still be in Premier because they ended up in the relegation places last season, but they were allowed to stay because FC Atlanta, who did not end up in the relegation spaces last season, opted to choose to go down to Division One because they're doing a reevaluation of their club, rebuilding it, and they're going to relaunch there. So they're doing well down in Division One, but that allowed SSL to stay up. They were given the invitation to stay up. They took it, and so they're going to try to make some progress this season. Down in the relegation spots, the temporary, hope for them, I'm sure they would look at that as temporary. Fountain City FC and FC Columbus Elite. FC Columbus Elite, one of the teams that came up from Division One through a spot that opened up through the removal of Vino Tinto Atlanta, finding it very hard to stay at pace with the Premier Division. Just overwhelmed on defense, I think. They've given up 24 goals. They've only scored 4. They're having trouble getting that going. So they're going to be one of those teams that is going to have to fight for survival. And they have a hard road ahead. There's a lot of competition in this division to overcome, and it's going to be something for them to challenge them. But Fountain City FC finally got their point this past weekend. But even still, I think that they would even be disappointed at the way they got that point. It could have been a lot better for them, and we'll touch on that as we get into the games from this past weekend. So on the Saturday this past weekend, we had the marquee matchup of Dalton United FC, who were hosting the Georgia Revolution. This was a much anticipated game because these are two teams that have had somewhat of a slow start to the season from their point of view. I mean, these are two teams that typically you want to see or expect to see at the top of the table. It's not been so far this season. Some drop points in an alarming fashion, I think, if they would look at their season so far. But it was Dalton United who did kind of turn things around for themselves with the 3-2 victory. Georgia Revolution still looking to get some consistency. But Yip Van Den Essen, of course, stays in the title hunt for the Golden Boot with a goal today. He's still in a three-way tie now with Emmanuel Lum and Ronald Maradiaga at North Georgia, who both scored multiple goals this past weekend. But this game is going to be a good result for Dalton United to get their title hunt back underway, if still a uphill battle when you consider the form of teams like Kalonji Per Profile and North Georgia United. So that result tells us a little bit more about the fate of those two teams going forward. One, I think, is going to have to look, that would be the Georgia Revolution, look at more of a goal of a high playoff place. But Dalton United still with an opportunity with games to play, but they're going to need a lot of help if they have any hope of a division title this season. Next up was the early game on Sunday. That would be Portoros FC, who are hosting Albion SC. These are two teams that would have had two different, I think, goals for the season. Albion SC struggled last season. They've struggled so far this season. But they did manage to get a point off of Portoros with a 2-2 tie today. And so this is something that is going to be concerning for Portoros because they were hoping, much like Georgia Revolution, to be in a little bit better position than they have been so far. They do have the acquisition of Nazario Mbamio from Georgia Athletic from last season, who's come over to bolster up the attack there. He did score today, and Mark Bonneau also put in a goal for them. But it wasn't enough. But Eli Bannister and Demarion McCrae scoring for Albion. And so this is something that Portoros is still going to have to fight to get themselves back in line. I think the title may be a little out of touch right now, but there's still plenty to play for as far as the playoff places, and the playoffs are seeded, so you want to get a high playoff place and home field advantage if you can. So you're going to keep playing for those. Next up was the afternoon game on Sunday, UMA FC hosting Fountain City FC. UMA FC, fantastic start to the season, up to on the upper half of the table. Fountain City struggled this season, no points going into this game. To try to get something going for themselves. They're currently in the relegation spots. But this is one of those games, though, it's probably one of the most dramatic endings to the game, any game on the weekend. Fountain City took a 1-0 lead deep into injury time of the second half, looking to close out for their first 3 points of the game. Penalty call in the 93rd minute put UMA FC on the spot, and they were able to equalize from the spot from Camilo Velez to equal the earlier goal by Tristan Scheidel. And so, they did get the point, their first point of the season did Fountain City, but it could have been so much more. And I think that there would have been a disappointment of not getting the full 3 points there. UMA FC rescued a point out of there. They should be happy with that because they were on the verge of losing that match. But they've had a great start to the season, firmly placed in the playoff places. And I think that's where they're going to be by the end of the season. And next up was a significant match on Sunday later in the afternoon. This would be North Georgia United, who were hosting FC Columbus Elite. FC Columbus, of course, coming up from Columbus all the way up to Dalton United near the Tennessee border. And it was a tough day. This was a rematch, not a rematch, but a rescheduled game initially canceled due to severe weather. But for this game, North Georgia really shown what they can do, and they are significant title contenders right now in their race right now with Kalonji per profile, as they both are masters at the top of the division. Most notably in this game, you had a hat trick from Emmanuel Lum. He's one of the two players for North Georgia that are vying for the Golden Boot. The other being Ronald Maradiaga, who himself had a brace on the game to add to John Engel, and also a late goal by Jason Ortega, who came on as a substitute in that match. They were able to best the goals from Edwin Cruz and Antonio Ramos later on. But North Georgia were in firm control of this game, running out as 7-2 winners, staying close to staying with Kalonji Pro Profile at the top of the Premier Division table right now, and setting up to a great later in the season matchup between those two, and that game will be covered by ASMG as well. But a fine performance from North Georgia United. FC Columbus United, Elite rather, is going to be looking to try to build something to get out of the relegation spots right now. They are in a little bit of trouble because they're showing a lot of vulnerability in defense. Right now they have the worst graded defense because of giving up the most goals. Right now they've given up 24 goals. They've only scored 4, so they're having trouble scoring as well. And in this division, that can be relegation fodder. So they're going to have to find a solution for that. Daniel Asher and company will have to figure something out and get that team going for the rest of the season. Their goal is going to be to stay out of the relegation places. So the last game that we're going to cover was another marquee matchup. It was a game down in Birmingham, Alabama at Legion Field. It's a new venue for FC Birmingham. They're negotiating to possibly make that their permanent home field. It's a fantastic facility, very professional facility. But it was Kalonji Pro Profile who really outshone FC Birmingham on the day, winning 5-0. This was a game that Kalonji jumped on FC Birmingham early, scored 4 goals in the first half. FC Columbus made some adjustments in the second half, were able to do a little bit better in defense, but they could not break through the Kalonji midfield and defenders to get anything out of this match. So a late goal by Patrick Kwanda was able to be added to a goal by Blake White and Kareem Tamimi in the first half, along with a brace from Zane Hilton. So Kalonji Pro Profile just rolls right along. Again, when you look at the league table and look at the performances of the teams, Kalonji Pro Profile, best attacking team so far this season, 24 goals scored in 4 games, only giving up 2 goals with a goal difference of 22. That's by far the best in the division. North Georgia comes up second in that quality with 19 goals scored and only 6 given up, a goal difference of 13. So these two teams so far are head and shoulders above all the others right now. Leminyo's right there with them, but it's going to be interesting to see how the mid part of the season goes for both of these teams and any teams that are challenging to get back up there in the title race or even the playoff races. And we'll see what happens in the relegation spots. And that'll just about do it for this past weekend of results. We had some very interesting results that shows teams going in very different directions and with varying goals that they have to get something out of this season, whether it's the fight against relegation or playing for a playoff place or the division title. So lots of drama left to be exposed by these guys. ASMG is going to be there to cover all the action, all the marquee matchups, and some of the special interest stories from behind the scenes. Please keep an eye out. We're going to be launching our own Patreon channel in the coming weekend. And one of the goals there is to expand coverage and find some support for the staff that we have here that works so hard to bring you this content. and also the live broadcast as well as the podcast that we do here, highlight reels and edits and things of that nature. We're going to do even more on Patreon. Exclusive content that's not available anywhere else is going to be there, including extended highlights of full games that not available on the YouTube channel, and special interest and behind the scenes content too. So keep an eye out for that. For just pennies, you can get some expanded coverage of this league and watch these future stars grow and prosper. So thanks again for listening in on this Back Pass episode. Please like, share, and subscribe. Hit that notification bell, and we'll see you again on the weekend.